medicine on the horizon. It's called social prescribing. It's not about the meds that you take. You are prescribed to take a break. Walk in nature or sing with the choir. Helps you bring your spirits higher. There's so much social isolation, loneliness that calls for transportation. We each travel a different road. Social prescribing helps our overload. Could it be a script or civility? Or maybe we need creativity. Doctors prescribe meds galore for your stuffed nose or if your back is sore. If your heart beats too fast, or if you're out of breath, if your tummy hurts, or if you got stress, where medicine ends, social prescribing starts. Your need for exercise, or maybe your love of the arts. Woo! Coming out of COVID, we were so alone. Social prescribing sets a holistic tone. Social prescribing USA helps the doctors make our day. Organizations like NASB help us all rebuild the community. Doctors prescribe meds galore for your stuffed nose or if your back is sore. If your heart beats too fast, or if you're out of breath, if your tummy hurts, or if you got stress, where medicine ends, social prescribing starts. Your need for exercise, maybe your love of the arts. Where medicine ends, social prescribing starts. Your need for exercise, maybe your love of the arts.
Hello there and welcome. I hope you enjoyed the video. That song was by my brother Richard Siegel and myself. Dr. Alan Siegel. I'm a family physician. I've been working in Contra Costa in California for the last 25 years. I'm also the co-founder for Social Prescribing USA. Please, as she said, drop in the chat your name and where you're from, and we just love to see who's here. So welcome to Live Longer, Healthier, and Happier. We have an incredible panel today, and hopefully they can help us learn how to live longer, healthier, and happier. So we're thrilled you're joined us today. We hope you leave here with the fire that brings the panelists to this work. Many of them have been in this work for a long time. Once you hear about their experiences, I think you will also want to be a social prescriber. So as we go, we have an amazing team of gremlins who will be dropping links into the chat. I don't want you to have to work too hard. We will send a link with the recording and with whatever links that we have in there by early next week. And also there's a Q&A box you can see, and hopefully we will be able to get to many of the questions. If not, we will try to address them afterwards. So in my practice, as I said, it's an underserved practice. I figured out it's about almost 6,000 days of clinic. Including today, pretty much I hear about people suffering with their anxiety, their depression, loneliness, chronic disease, chronic pain. Not a great advertisement for my job, but that's what we do. And that is really the reality of what people are suffering with. And sometimes I hear from people, I love drawing, but I don't do it anymore. And people often stop doing the things that really make them happy. And that's kind of one of the cardinal signs of depression. When I experienced depression in my late 20s, I stopped doing the things that I enjoy. And I pushed myself to play music. And I think that was one of the things that really helped bring me out of that time. What do we have to offer for mental health suffering? So most of our chronic disease is really driven by mental health, the connections between heart disease and diabetes, all that is very obvious. But when it comes down to it, really have a therapist and we have a few classes of medications. And very quickly we get into side effects, or they don't want to take medications, resistance to therapy. And so we run out of our tools. And as I said in Forbes yesterday, it was our article about global aging, social prescribing adds a wealth of healing modalities, including engaging in the arts, being in nature, volunteering, and joining community groups, all with great evidence behind them. Using all the tools in the toolbox will transform how we practice medicine and how our patients heal. And I want to offer real healing to my patients. I've seen what expressive arts, I've been out at regional parks with my patients. I've did group medical visits for 10 years, where people really build a community, pregnancy, diabetes, all those kind of things, and walking groups. And this stuff is powerful. In the wake of COVID, the appreciation of loneliness, and mental health crisis that we're now experiencing, our crisis of losing 25% of our clinicians in medicine, the desperation of the moment really cracks open the possibility that we can use some new tools and some new tactics, a new appreciation of what healing can really look like and how do we get there. So social prescribing gives us an opportunity to engage our patients and ourselves and figure out what kind of things help the wounds that happen in life. And then we can help make it happen. I think that part of it is super important. So it's a more holistic approach to health and wellness. And it brings many tools, as I mentioned, to the hands of our health providers, things that are really closer to the meaning, hearts and souls and minds of our patients. Some things that are important, the role of the link worker, we find incredibly critical. They act as an intermediary between a referral and then being able to do activities. And in UK, the big thing is asking what matters to you. And so that seems like a critical point is patient-centeredness, and then they help make it happen. So as one of the providers, I also don't want to add work to our professionals or give lists of community resources to the patients that they then need to explore, because that really just doesn't work. I've done it before. I know it doesn't work. So if we do this well, with that kind of system built in, we can really both rebuild community and we can help individuals heal. So today we're excited to celebrate our first inaugural Social Prescribing Day in the United States. We've had some amazing people help put this virtual webinar together: Jennifer Kuo, Josh Hill, Liz Rubel, and Ivory Rose. They're part of Social Prescribing USA's community of practice, and that's a bunch of implementers who work across the United States trying to get programs moving at different stages. We activated the group to get the word out about social prescribing, try to make this Social Prescribing Day happen. And they really activated and have been doing social media all day. And I invite you to join that group. So there should be an email in the chat, and please let us know if you want to join. There's also another virtual event this evening, or actually just following this at 2:30, a group called Kokoro. They're doing a virtual sonic social prescribing experience that is 2 hours. And then if you're in the Bay Area, we would love for you to come to our public event at 6 p.m. at Manny's. And so we'd love to see you. We co-founded Social Prescribing USA 2 years ago to advocate for social prescribing really to be brought to everybody over the next 10 years. Of course, that's optimistic, but that's really how we're going. And with all the things that have come together, I think it's pretty clear that we need to do something. We have a newsletter, and we're going to have a soon-to-be updated website. So there should be links in the chat for that. And now we're going to move into a 2-minute video it's one of the best things I've seen to explain social prescribing.
Many things affect your health and well-being. GPs tell us that a lot of people visit them feeling isolated, lonely, or stressed out by work, money, and housing problems. These are issues that can't be fixed by doctors and medicine alone. At its most basic, a social prescription offers the kind of help that doesn't come in a tube or a bottle. The idea behind social prescribing is to help you to have more control over your healthcare and find ways to manage your needs in a way that suits you. There are lots of different ways of providing social prescribing services. It often starts with a conversation, perhaps with a link worker, a support broker, or a community navigator. Whatever they are called, they are there to listen to you and put you in touch with whatever it is you might need in order to feel better. That might mean being introduced to a community group, a new activity, or a local club. It could be legal advice, volunteers to help around the house. It might just be information and guidance, a bit of inside knowledge on your situation and what local resources there are available. It could even be some support in how to create something new. Studies show that individuals with social prescriptions get better and feel better faster than those treated with medicine alone. And because it works, it's happening more and more. To find out how it can work for you, talk to your doctor, health professional, or local authority today.
Welcome back. So I am going to introduce our first panelist. Julia Hotz is an author and solutions-focused science journalist based in New York. Her stories have appeared in the New York Times, Wired, Scientific American, the Boston Globe, Time Magazine, and more. After graduating from the University of Cambridge, she joined the Solutions Journalism Network, a nonprofit helping other journalists report on the big new ideas changing the world. She was co-host and co-creator of the Webby Award-winning Google newscast, Tell Me Something Good, sharing 60-second reported solutions to some of today's biggest problems. And I'm sure she will tell you about her upcoming book. Welcome, Jules.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm still buzzing from your music video, to be honest. I know we have an amazingly packed agenda, so I'm just going to share my screen now. And can everyone see? Okay. Give me 1 second. I was afraid of this. All right. Share screen. Here we go. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't like to cooperate with the big screen, so that is okay. Anyway, it's great to be here, and wow, happy Social Prescribing Day. First of all, a little background about me. As Alan said, I was a journalist who reported on solutions, yes, but I was a little afraid to touch health and healthcare because I'm an American, and to be quite honest, from the US, that all seemed very, very complicated here. So I've been a journalist for about 5 years, but then the pandemic happened and the problems of health and healthcare just seemed too big to ignore. We saw headlines like this, a 25% increase around the world in anxiety and depression. We saw increase in symptoms of ADHD. We saw increased poor lifestyles, generally worse mental health. We saw also, increases in the disparities and health inequities around, food insecurity and housing insecurity and economic insecurity. with especially strong implications, racially in the United States. And we also saw, as Alan alluded to, crises in healthcare about doctor shortages and some doctor burnout. We saw hospitals, closing or super, super strained, especially in parts of rural America, which it was great to see in the chat that we have a really great geographic diversity today. We saw, mental health related emergency department visits rising, especially for young people. And then we just saw this sort of general endemic of unwellness. Adam Grant had a great article about this sort of endemic feeling of languishing and blah during the pandemic. Distract depression, to describe this. And of course, so many alarms being sounded on the epidemic of loneliness. Okay, so that's where, this was the starting point, and I promise you it's going to get more optimistic from here. So I tried to understand, like, what was underneath all of this. And of course, we know that social prescribing gets its name in part from this idea of being social determinants of health, that some researchers suggest up to 80% of our health is determined by things like where we live and who we live with, and our family and social support, our income. Social prescribing addresses all of these kinds of things, right? It's not just the friendship groups and things like that, which we love, but it's also food and housing and money. And I saw there are some link workers over here from the UK who can for sure speak to that. But so I started off focusing on this. I did a story in 2021 for Wired about social prescribing in the UK as sort of like a response to some of these pandemic crises we were seeing. And then somebody replied to that and said, you should write a book about this. This is really spreading all around the world. And today we're proud to say that there are evidence of social prescribing models in almost 30 countries. So that's what I've spent the last couple of years doing, is going all around the world to meet some of these people. And as Alan mentioned, I have a book coming out in June that sort of chronicles these stories. It's called The Connection Cure. And it focuses really mainly on movement, nature, art, service, and belonging as being the ingredients prescribed. But certainly, the sort of how this all happened chapters talk about prescribing food and legal support and money and housing things too. But so since we have the amazing Dr. Jill Sonke and Dr. Don Rakow here today to talk about art and nature, I wanted to share just a couple of examples I came across related to that. And the evidence around prescribing nature is really interesting. In my research, I found that a lot of it dates back to the 80s, kind of like a high time of our crumbling attention. And these researchers found that there are so many distractions in our modern society. We experience something called directed attention fatigue, but nature actually has this unique property that it can restore our attention because of the way we've evolved, because of, I see Don nodding, our biophilic tendencies. And I thought this was so interesting. And I actually went all the way over to Japan to interview one of the world's leading forest bather researchers and practitioners. He talks about how literally just spending time in the forest, engaging with all 5 senses in the forest, has these wonderful physical and mental health benefits, such as increasing your NK cells, which are associated with your immune function and preventing cancers, reduces your stress hormones, improves your sleep, all these wild physical benefits. And I love this study also from Stanford that talks about how just walking in a natural setting versus walking in like a busy cityscape for 90 minutes can reduce activity in the brain, that parts of the brain that's associated with rumination. We know what ruminating is, right? Like dwelling on negative thoughts. And so one of the case studies I talk about is this woman named Heather. She's 25 years old. She lives in Rutland, Vermont. And what mattered to her was being outside. She says to me, I've always loved to be outdoors. It's my happy place. We went around town together. She knew like every single thing about the hiking trails there. But Heather also had a really demanding work schedule. She worked 3 jobs, and she started to struggle with the symptoms of stress, chest pains, insomnia. So one day she goes to the doctor's office and she sees an ad there for something called Come Alive Outside. And that's exactly kind of what it sounds like. It's a 10-week nature course with a local organization, Come Alive Outside, actually leading Heather and a group through joyful outdoor activities. And so her before and after story is that, she had gone from having these symptoms, feeling like it's impossible to get everything done. She's ruminating on her to-do list, to realizing that when she's having those thoughts, actually going outside can be really helpful. She's also made a lot of friends and connections through this, and her physical symptoms have toned down too. And sure enough, Come Alive Outside, this is not an anomaly. This is a kind of something that generally happens across the board. Don, Alan, how am I doing on time? Getting up there? Okay, so I'm just going to jump then to an art example. I'm sure Dr. Jill Sonke will talk all about the amazing research she and her team have gathered around art prescriptions. I'll just tell this quick story of Kuhn over in Australia. What mattered to her was writing, drawing, painting. She was kind of like obsessed with Psyduck, the Pokemon, because it, has all these cool psychic powers. Anyway, she also had a pretty traumatic childhood, and in her adulthood developed symptoms of PTSD. Australia had a program where they actually teamed up with a local organization called Makeshift, offering a creativity workshop for activities like painting and drawing. And by the end of it, she's had a better handle on those symptoms. She says this beautiful quote, I thought I was just so broken and damaged, but I've realized there's more out there I can do. I have hope that I can find something I'm passionate about. And stories like these with Makeshift are the norm too. People improve their moods, more confident, more hopeful, more social interactions, all of the things we know that are associated with positive health. So I'll stop there and kick it back over. Thanks for letting me talk about just 2 examples, but this book, The Connection Cure, talks about plenty more. And of course, Jill and Don are going to talk even more about those wonderful benefits of art and nature.
Thank you very much, Jules. Yeah, it's wonderful to hear the examples. There's just endless examples of these changes, but also the studies. And I think that people want to hear the studies. And so I think Jill will be a great person to share some of that. We're going to first, thank you very much, Jules. We're going to transition to a couple videos that have been sent out from people in the field who are doing work around social prescribing.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Ford of CultureRx Social Prescription in Springfield, Massachusetts. We are so excited to be a part of this amazing movement of social prescribing across the nation. Here in Springfield, we offer our community a dance session called Let's Get Moving, where community members of all ages, all cultures, and all abilities can come together and just dance. We partner with our local health clinics, where the physicians there actually write prescriptions for their patients to be able to attend our session. We also partner with community organizations to offer spaces to host our sessions for free. So you see, forming great community partnerships is actually really, really important to social prescribing. So we hope you'll reach into your community to form new partnerships and offer sessions through the arts that help bring hope and healing to your communities.
Hi, my name is Yara Zismanilani, and I'm part of Temple University College of Public Health, located in Philadelphia. I'm focused on shared decision-making and social prescribing as a treatment option for people with mental health condition in primary care settings and in psychiatric settings. Social prescribing offers alternative and complementary treatment option, leading to positive impact on health outcomes. It has been transformative. Let's collaborate to enhance social prescribing's impact.
So just a few examples, and there's just a lot of amazing work going on around the country. And so one of the people who's overseeing some of that work is Jill Sonke. She is studying a lot of the pilots that are going on. I'm not sure she's going to talk about that today, but we're really excited to see the outcomes of that. Jill is a friend, a mentor, a hero of mine. She is Director of Research Initiatives in the Center for Arts in Medicine at the University of Florida, Director of National Research and Impact for the One Nation, One Project Initiative, and co-director of the EpiArts Lab, a national endowment for the Arts Research Lab in partnership with University College London. She serves on the steering committee for the Jameel Arts and Health Lab and served during the COVID-19 pandemic as a senior advisor to the CDC. She is an affiliated faculty member at University of Florida School of Theater and Dance, the Fixel Institute to Neurological Diseases, and the Center for African Studies, as well as an editorial board member for the Health Promotion Practice Journal. She is a dancer and an amateur musician, a mixed methods researcher with over 70 publications, and has 28 plus years of leadership in the field in arts and health. She's a recipient of numerous awards and over 350 grants for her programs and research in the arts and health. Jill Sonke, Dr. Jill Sonke.
Thank you, Alan. So good to be here, Jules. That was fabulous. I always learn so much from you and just enjoy your passion for this work so much. Thank you for all that you're doing to advance this field. I'm going to share my slides and talk a little bit about the work that we're doing in the EpiArts Lab that Alan referred to. The EpiArts Lab, as Ellen mentioned, is a National Endowment for the Arts Research Lab that I have the immense pleasure of co-directing with Dr. Daisy Fancourt at University College London. We have incredible partners, incredible staff, and we do both epidemiological studies and field building research to advance research through the development of resources for researchers. So the EPI part of our work is focused on exploring the impact of arts and cultural engagement or participation on population level health outcomes in the United States. So we use longitudinal large cohort studies. We have 7 databases primarily that we use in order to explore statistically associations between the arts participation and an array of health outcomes across the lifespan. The EpiArts Lab is also dedicated to advancing social prescribing research, policy, and practice in the US. And so I'm going to talk a little bit first about some of the findings from our statistical studies that sort of underpin the work that we're committed to around advancing social prescribing research, practice, and policy in the United States specifically. So we have now in the EpiArts Lab 17 publications. So you can go to our website and see those publications. We are continuing to undertake these statistical studies, but we started by looking at who participates in the arts in the United States. And unfortunately, our research validated previous research and underscored what we know already about significant disparities in arts participation across gender, across race, across geographies, across socioeconomics. So unfortunately, those disparities persist, and that awareness is a significant part of our work. So as we have explored relationships between arts participation and various health outcomes, we've found relationships across the lifespan. For example, related to young people, we've found that young people who participate in arts activities, both school-based and outside of school, have higher odds of reporting social support, which of course is a significant component of social cohesion. So I note those findings here. We also have found significant relationships between arts participation and social well-being, flourishing, and an array of other health and behavioral outcomes. At other points in the lifespan, looking in particular at older adults, we found that older adults, people over the age of 50, who participate in arts and cultural activities are 20% less likely to be depressed. And that's if they participate in creative activities just once a month or more. We also have found that older adults who participate in arts and cultural activities are more likely to experience healthy aging if they participate, again, just once a month or more. So we found a number of dose-response relationships. And interestingly, it doesn't take that much time in the arts in order to realize health benefits and health outcomes. So this research and much research that's been conducted around the world by others helps us understand and articulate that arts participation is indeed a health behavior. We also understand, based on the disparities that persist and the health outcomes that we see in relation to arts participation, that access to the arts is a social determinant of health. So we need to think about arts and cultural participation alongside other social determinants or social drivers of health today. We also recognize that arts participation has real practical and financial value. The arts are multimodal. They're unique among health interventions in that they can have benefits across physical, cognitive, social, spiritual, emotional domains, all at the same time. We also understand that while the arts aren't for everybody, they have general appeal, especially as we compare them to other health interventions. Again, in comparison, they are low risk, and they're very cost effective. So for all of those reasons and more, enter social prescribing in the United States healthcare landscape today. So coming back to the EpiArts Lab and the work that we're doing, we're working to advance the evidence base to help drive evidence-based practice and policy. We recognize such interest in social prescribing these days, and we want to make sure that both practice and policy decisions can be underpinned by evidence. And so we're working fast. We recognize that in this space of arts and health, we kind of moved and evolved slowly, and the evidence base evolved slowly as a result. We don't feel that we have that kind of time with social prescribing. We feel that the ship is being loaded, and in many places it's sailing. So we're working to develop resources that can help us to undertake high quality research that can be synthesized in particular, because evidence synthesis, things like systematic reviews and meta-analysis, are often looked to drive both practice and policy. So we need this evidence. We also value every sort of way of knowing and recognize that people's experiences and what we just see and experience and know around social prescribing is really important. But as we work to advance the evidence base, we're taking 4 primary areas of action. We're developing a core outcome set, specifically looking at ways in which the arts can be engaged around approaches to social isolation and loneliness, which we know, as Jules said, is a huge issue in the United States today. And so we're at the later stages. We expect to finish this work by August of this year, and we'll offer a core outcome set, which is an evidence-based set of outcomes that says to folks who are measuring anything around use of the arts to address social cohesion, hey, if you're going to study stuff, please study these things as well, or consider studying these things so that we can synthesize that evidence. We've also conducted to date 22 case studies of social prescribing pilots and programs in the United States. We'll be releasing that through a full report on our website toward the end of this year. And we're undertaking social prescribing implementation science studies. And these are the kind of studies that, for me, simply answer the question, if we build it, will they come? Is this an idea that's feasible, acceptable, interesting to people in the United States? And so we're conducting surveys and interviews of social prescribing leaders and organizers, managers, staff, link workers, artists, and the participants in those programs. We're also, and again, we'll have those studies completed by the end of 2024. We've also been working on a set of key common outcomes, which are like a core outcome set, in that they're recommendations for what should be or could be studied around social prescribing in the United States. So I'm just going to finish up by sharing a few of the results of that study. And note that this study, it's primarily a Delphi method study to develop the key outcomes, key common outcomes set. And in the process, we conducted a mapping review of the evidence to identify what outcomes are most commonly studied around the world. And we're at the stage of this study where we're now developing recommendations through data collection and analysis for the United States specifically. That work should be released around August of this year. So in our mapping review of the evidence, we looked at 13 countries that are included in the World Health Organization's social prescribing toolkit. So these are 13 of the 30 countries that Jules mentioned, or maybe that was you, Alan. One of you mentioned 30 countries that have social prescribing programs. And so we included 87 articles among many more that we reviewed in this evidence synthesis project, and we identified 347 unique outcomes that were studied in these 87 research projects. So you can see our map here, our evidence map. We organize these outcomes around patient outcomes, and you can see most of those outcomes. There were 58 unique lifestyle and behavior outcomes that were measured. There were 61 mental health outcomes that were measured. We also organized around system outcomes, things like financial and economic impacts and workforce impacts. And as you can see, healthcare and service utilization was the most frequently studied area of outcomes here. We also looked, without categorizing, at the prevalence of unique outcomes. And we saw that across those articles, well-being was most often studied, confidence, which relates to, of course, self-efficacy and confidence in undertaking and having control of your own health. Social isolation came up again, general practitioner visits. So healthcare utilization is a big area of interest in outcome studies. We also geographically mapped, and not surprisingly, we found the biggest prevalence of evidence in the UK and in England in particular. But you can see a broad representation across quite a few countries here in this evidence base. So I wanted to finish by just sharing a few resources that we've released already. This mapping review has been published, and I think you'll see the link to this in the chat, so you can access that research. We also had the great pleasure of working with Dr. Tasha Golden, who is doing incredible work around social prescribing, and Mass Cultural Council, who is doing so as well, on creating this Arts on Prescription field guide for US communities. So again, there's a link in the chat or coming into the chat that will help you access that wonderful resource. And we also, with Alan and Jules and others, participated in a really exciting design sprint for social prescribing in the United States in the Harvard Design Lab. And a beautiful report of that work was published as well. Full disclosure, the link to this on our website is broken at the moment. I've asked for it to be fixed, so you can come back to our website and find this report shortly. But thank you so much. I'll turn it back to Alan.
Thank you so much, Jill. That was amazing. Yeah, every time I learn so much from you as well. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll be back. We are going to move into a couple more videos from the field, and I think Josh is going to get that ready.
Hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Markle with Open Source Wellness. We are a nonprofit organization based in Oakland, California, but our mission and reach is increasingly national because we are partnering with YMCAs to deliver our model, which we call Community as Medicine. And what this means is that we partner with clinical healthcare delivery systems, including the federally qualified health centers, to support patients with physical activity, healthy food, stress reduction, and social connection. And all of this is done via culturally humble and trauma-informed group health coaching. And really the impact that I see this social prescribing model have is that it brings participants a sense of meaningful human connection in addition to health and well-being, and that they come away with a sense of joyful empowerment. In fact, many of our participants go on to train to become coaches with us, which is something we're so proud of. So thanks all. Happy Social Prescribing Day. Bye.
Because a walk in the park is great for your health, local park agencies have teamed with doctors to create healthy parks, healthy people, Bay Area.
spending time outside in parks is both fun and vital to your health.
Join your local park staff for healthy walks and free programs the first Saturday of every month.
Enjoy the great outdoors close to home.
Get active and we'll see you and your family in the parks.
A walk in the park really is great for your health.
Learn more at hphpbayarea.org.
And welcome back. So that seems like a good transition into Dr. Rakow. So I'd like to introduce him to us today. He is a retired associate professor in the section of horticulture at Cornell University's School of Integrative Plant Science. One aspect of his research focuses on the impact of time in nature on human health and behavior. He's the co-author of Nature RX, Improving College Student Mental Health. He founded the Nature RX at Cornell program and currently co-directs the nationwide campus Nature RX networks, which has spread, to my understanding, to 60 campuses, which is incredible. He believes that efforts must be directed to make green sites equally accessible and usable to all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, or social status. He also writes about history and management of public gardens and their contributions to society and human culture. And here is Dr. Rakow.
So it is an honor to be part of Social Prescribing Day, and I am going to attempt to share my screen. So as Alan was describing in the introduction, I spend much of my time focusing on this particular audience, college students and college-age students. And we know that this is an audience that today is suffering from multiple psychological problems as a result of numerous conditions. Those conditions range from post-pandemic effects to the effects of social media on personal identity and impression, economic concerns, certainly concerns about global climate change, and we're increasingly hearing the phrase eco-anxiety being applied to young people, and also academic pressures. These pressures often start very early in life, in preteens or middle school or high school, but then can be transferred to college experience. And in fact, in 2022, the National College Health Assessment, which was conducted by the American College Health Association, reported that 76% of respondents indicated that they had felt moderate or serious psychological distress in the previous year. 3/4 of all students who had been participants in this particular study. And that very high rate of social anxiety is mirrored in a number of other studies. And within the past year, our current Surgeon General has warned that social media may harm children and adolescents and can really set back their social and academic development. So there have been numerous studies that have focused on adolescents and young adults that have found that spending time out in nature, and in some cases, spending even short periods of time out in nature, can alleviate many of these social problems, can actually contribute to an improvement in classroom behavior and performance, and can lead to better self-reported well-being. Knowing that all of these problems exist, and as a professor at Cornell University, a number of years ago, several colleagues and I got together and reflected on the fact that Cornell has one of the most beautiful nature-filled campuses in the US, and yet we have a student body that has very high rates of identified psychological problems. So we did band together and created Nature RX at Cornell, whose mission, as you can see here, is to reduce stress and thereby increase physical and mental health in students through their engagement with nature, and to cultivate in students an increased appreciation of nature. We were successful in convincing the health professionals at the Cornell Health Center to become engaged in the form of social prescribing that we call Nature RX. Initially, physicians and psychological counselors, registered nurses, and others were handing out this quarter card that said, as you can see, spend time in nature. Research shows spending quality time in nature is good for your overall health and well-being. The problem with this approach was that students get a lot of papers, and they often ignore papers that they receive. They go to the bottom of their backpacks. So over time, we were able to convince Cornell Health to actually make the option of discussing and recommending time in nature one of the options on the student's electronic health record. More than that, every student who has Nature RX discussed and recommended is then, in the following month, sent an anonymous and confidential survey to see the degree to which they have in fact followed this recommendation and whether it has impacted the frequency with which they go out into nature, as well as whatever psychological, social, or academic issues they were dealing with. Over 800 of these recommendations are provided to students each academic year. We had a real downturn, as you would expect, during the COVID pandemic, but the program has really revved up again and is going full tilt. As Alan also mentioned in his introduction, along with Dr. Dorothy Ebis at College of William and Mary, I co-direct the Campus Nature RX Network. This is a network of over 60 campuses now. Each school is conducting their Nature RX program in an individual way, but we provide a bi-monthly newsletter, informative YouTube videos, an annual fall symposium that attracts over 200 individuals. And our latest offering that we will be offering for the first time this August is a year-long Campus Nature RX Academy and Certificate program. And this will be particularly helpful for those colleges and universities that are interested in creating Nature RX programs, but need the kind of guidance and direction and activities that we will be providing. My 8-minute time clock is about to go off, so I will finish by saying that I am the co-author of the text, Nature RX, Improving College Student Mental Health. And if individuals would like to know anything more about my work, my email is dr14@cornell.edu, and you can learn more about the Campus Nature RX Network and the Academy by going to campusnature.com. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rakow. So I think we're going to have the rest of our panelists joining us. And just want to ask a couple of questions about, as you can see, a lot of these interventions is kind of old school. This is not high tech. We're talking about going back to nature. We're talking about doing art that like we did when we were kids naturally, but somehow we learned not to. So a lot of it is really, I don't know, it's honoring very powerful interventions, but that are really simple at their core. So I love that part of social prescribing. And when I tell people about it, it seems like, oh yeah, of course, that's what you would do. So yes.
If I can comment on that quickly, Alan, there was a paper published a few years ago by colleague Michelle Kondo and others, whose title, and I'm paraphrasing, was something like Rediscovering Nature RX. And it focused on how in the early 20th century, nature was being prescribed for things like tuberculosis, being underweight, and conditions that are not as prevalent today. And yet, as you say, it is not a new thing.
Well, thank you. So yeah, I would love to ask our panelists kind of what does social prescribing have to offer that is different? How does it help us live healthier, happier, and longer? Who would like to jump in? Yeah, go ahead, Jules.
I could kick off and just say that, in addition to the incredible research we just heard about that, shows that social prescribing reduces the symptoms of the things that are the opposite of happiness and health. I was describing this book to a friend yesterday, and she had just a beautiful take that it's kind of the only medicine that is like fun to take. You never really look forward to taking your medicine. And I think that's all about the what matters to you shift. I saw it firsthand in so many people I interviewed around the world that it wasn't just about engaging in the artistic activity or the nature activity or the movement activity, whatever it was. It was also, being in an environment that sort of removed them from their pains. And as you alluded to, Alan, reminded them of maybe a joy and wonder they experienced in childhood. And, in the last part of the book, I end up prescribing myself these things and chronicling some of, the benefits I experienced too. So I think even if you don't identify as having, an illness, so you don't have the diagnostic criteria, these things are additive. In Denmark, they even call them culture vitamins, right? So I think it has a lot to offer literally all of us.
I'll just add to that. I think it is very much about wellness and well-being and opportunities, for well-being and prevention and health promotion. And I think an important consideration here is health equity, right? Social prescribing is meant to fill a gap and to help address health equity and disparities. People who are uninsured don't have access to wellness, prevention, well-being resources like people who are well insured in the United States. And I think social prescribing has the potential to help there by expanding what is the arena of health, right? Healthcare settings, hospitals, clinics, doctors' offices, those are the place where we want healing to happen, right? Where we bring illness and where we want to be able to find really great responses to that illness. But where health is generated is not in those settings, right? Health is generated in our communities and in our everyday lives and through the ways in which we live and care for ourselves every day. So, if social prescribing can help create better access to those available local resources, including nature, arts, culture, social programs, volunteering, all of the things that we wrap under that umbrella, then I think we've made a difference. And especially someone put a question in the chat about the financial components, which we can dig into more under another question, but just want to flag here that, you know, many of these activities can be low or no cost, right? And many of these activities are lower cost than health and illness interventions. And so if we can take the boundaries of what healthcare and public health pay for now, especially around the things that are being paid for to address social determinants of health, and there are big investments in there have been for decades. But if we can just broaden the margins to consider arts, culture, nature, and all these things, health resources that can be paid for, right? I think it's a matter of probably investing new resources in the beginning, but ultimately just extending the same resources, because perhaps we would have to spend less money on higher cost interventions if we can intervene earlier with these wellness promoting lower cost activities.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah, Don.
You know, to build on what both Jules and Jill were just sharing, I am not a health professional, but I do know that the majority of our population, when engaging with a physician or other health professional, often find that to be an intimidating experience, being prescribed medicines that are either unfamiliar or unpronounceable. I think through social prescribing, including the Nature RX that I spoke about, it really humanizes the medical field, and it shows those who are seeking medical support that they're dealing with real people. And I think that that can go a very long way toward having people actually follow the social prescriptions and develop closer relationships with their health professionals.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Jill, for bringing up the equity issue. It's something that I deal with, because if people have money, they can buy these things, but a lot of people don't have that kind of funds. I have a quick question about how do you see social prescribing getting incorporated into the U.S. healthcare system? Or maybe 1,000 systems, it's not one system, but how do you see this happening? Because it's happening in these 29 other countries, but many of them are countries that have one system that are paid for by the government, and that is a whole lot simpler.
Yeah, that's the big question, right? That's the really big question here in the United States. It's part of what we were grappling with in the Harvard Design Lab. We're planning now in partnership with the Federal Reserve Bank, which is of New York, which is really supporting exploration around social prescribing, and the folks who led the Harvard Design Lab Design Sprint, another series of 3 events that will specifically bring some focus to this financial issue and systems issue. I want to highlight here that we're not starting from zero, right? Social prescribing has actually been around in the United States for decades. It's existed as a way of bringing health resources to address those social determinants of health. So it has been focused on things like housing and food and transportation, really basic needs. It's really exciting to see the pilot that's happening in New Jersey right now, a partnership between the New Jersey Performing Arts Center and Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, because Horizon is engaging a program that exists. One of those programs that exists, it's called Neighbors in Health, and it's an allocation of money, of resources, to provide people with resources to address those needs in the social determinants of health space. So they are expanding those boundaries, and they're implementing arts prescribing. And that, specifically engaging with NJPAC. And one of the things that they had in mind related to the equity and access that's come up is recognition that as a partner, NJPAC can't simply open its doors and provide free tickets, for example, because the same barriers and the same lack of welcome will exist, even if ticket prices are covered, right? So their partnership includes creating a network of local artists and local arts and cultural organizations and resources who are reimbursed like in network providers, right? You know, that's kind of the dream language that happens in that pilot. So is there a day when our health insurance providers, you know, pay for arts, culture, nature, these things alongside other health interventions? I don't know. I hope so. My other question is, in the United States, will we see a national system level approach, like with the NHS in the UK paying for link workers as a part, you know, as one way to you know, engage policy and system to create social prescribing? Or will we see just you know, more of this incredible ideation and innovation that's happening in these? We know of about 30 pilots in the United States, right? There's incredible innovation. So will that breed a landscape of really unique, hyper localized social prescribing programs that maybe link around a professional organization or policy of sorts? We don't know if it'll be that sort of bottom up or top down or a meeting in the middle. We don't know, but it's exciting to be watching what's happening now in the United States.
Absolutely. Hey, Jules.
If I could chime in and build on that, that's a brilliant tee up, because I was going to address both your question, Alan, and also there's a question in the chat about loneliness specifically. And to Jill's point, you know, the New Jersey example is incredible. When I heard that there was an insurer getting behind a social prescribing pilot, my mind was blown. And one exciting, really national example that I love to talk about, I actually think if you're in SF tonight, you'll get to hear from one of the participants in this live, is the model coming out of the VA for a program called Compassionate Contact Corps. Now, the VA is like the, you know, big health organization, national level, United States. They found that during COVID, when they were doing their sort of check-in calls, asking questions like, do you have food? Do you have transportation? They found out that people were actually really lonely. Sometimes those calls was the only form of connection they received. So what do they do after the pandemic? They decide to take that wisdom and create a program that prescribes folks who get their services through the VA a virtual compassionate contact, a volunteer phone call buddy, 15 to 60 minutes a week, not just to check in, but to really get to know the person and actually bond using all these sort of, you know, psychologically informed questions. There's a beautiful success story in the book about a 92-year-old man named Glenn who was severely lonely. I mean, not to be morbid, but all of his friends and family had passed away. And through this national level, virtual social prescription program, he makes his first friend, a 40-year-old named Ryan, that he's had in decades. And as Jill said, it's so exciting to think about all the different formats that this could take in such a big country.
Thank you. Don, do you want to comment?
Yeah, you know, in my own arena, there are some remarkable individuals like Dr. Robert Czar, who created the Park RX America network, which involves many physicians, and Dr. David Sabgir, who started the Walk with a Doc movement in Columbus, Ohio, which has also expanded greatly. So this is not quite at the nationally endorsed and insurance provided levels that Jill was speaking about, but it is encouraging to see the degree to which nature prescribing has really been taking off.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, and just to come to mind as far as one group that we haven't really mentioned much about is the providers. I mean, I'm one of them, and you know, it got pretty bad, especially as COVID went on, as far as how burned out people were, how many people have left healthcare in clinical ways, people looking for non-clinical things. And so one of the newer findings is how good it is for the providers to be prescribing in a social prescribing model, that it's actually super healthy for them to be able to have other tools. That is actually coming to fruition in studies as well. So it's another really important part that I think we need to keep in mind. Let's go ahead and open it up. Liz, do you have some questions for us from the from our participants?
Sure. Thank you, panelists, so much. We have some specific questions and some more general questions. There's some questions around regional opportunities to get involved, any databases of organizations, either providers or organizations. And then there's some thoughts about link workers or becoming an organization that provides these services. How is it comparable to the link worker in the UK? How to become a link worker and how to offer your people who are already providing services or working with organizations, how they can get involved in providing these.
Anybody want to grab either one of those?
I would start by saying, and Ellen, I'm going to pass it back to you, in terms of the first question there, the resource Social Prescribing USA. I wonder if you want to share a little bit more about what you offer.
I think 2024, we're going to see a lot of growth with Social Prescribing USA, hopefully have staffing and move in that direction where we can really be able to support people around the country who want to do this. We have this community of practice that we mentioned, which really is a group of people that are doing this work around the country. Maybe it's 60 to 80 people. But we want to grow being able to support people around the country in different ways, because there's so many different groups. There's the arts groups, there's the nature groups, there's the physicians, so really we'd like to be able to support the different groups who want to be able to tackle this problem. So I think that will become what we'll be able to do as we grow over probably the next 3 to 6 months. And but yeah, sign up, become one of our community of practice, or contact us and let us know how you'd like to be involved. The second question was around link workers. And I honestly feel like that is the linchpin in social prescribing. It's just how, in this country, we're probably not going to be hiring new people to be link workers in many situations. So I think we have to think about the resources that we have. In my system, for example, in many systems, that's a community health worker or social worker who really can do that role. I've heard from others, one of my colleagues who works in cancer, who was like, well, what you're trying to do, we already do that in cancer care. So this isn't that foreign to the United States. I mean, Jill mentioned that this has been going on for a long time, but in cancer care, they really have been doing this type of work already. And often it is a social worker or community health worker who's providing that. So I think we need to think about how do we really build this into systems that we already have. And I'm not sure that we're going to be able to pay for a whole new generation of people, but I mean, I hope we are, because I feel like it's really important. So we'll have to figure that out along with everything else.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
Jill.
I was just going to real quick build on that. Alan and I kind of read each other's mind about, it might not be called the social worker, but certainly the community health worker, it might not be the link worker, but the social worker or the community health worker could and probably will take on those roles. It's a familiar story in Portugal, for example. One of the leading doctors bringing it there said, yeah, we can't bring on a link worker, but we already have social workers doing this work. Let's see if they want to do it. Sure enough, they did. That model is spread. Similar story in Singapore. Singapore has an amazing model. They ended up creating a position called well-being coaches. Again, not exactly like the link worker, but, fulfilling that role. So it's just exciting to see all the creative ways that countries, depending on what their systems have and what they need and what already exists, are figuring out ways to deliver on what the link worker does. But link workers are amazing. And there's so much great research from the UK on just how having a link worker has a huge return on investment in the practice.
Yeah, we have.
And just adding,
Sorry,
just adding to that link workers have been shown to be essential to adherence and to participation. Folks are given a prescription, they might not actually get there or utilize it unless there's someone functioning in that link worker role. And I just want to lift up, thank you, Lisa Wong, for putting the Art Pharmacy link in the chat, because that is an incredible resource for the development of social prescribing programming, and the presence of the link worker in that model is really important. So the link is there.
You grabbed it from my mind, because I was going to mention that it's a business model, and they provide the job as a link worker, basically through their system and hiring from those communities, they become the link worker. So we're going to see a whole lot of different ways to do things, which I think is really exciting. All right, Liz, you want to do one more?
Sure. So I know that we've talked a bit about access and equity issues here already, but we have a great question from a link worker in the UK who comes across issues around housing, homelessness, inadequate aid equipment within their homes. So just thinking about some other issues that you've come across. And with that question, there's a thoughtful question around the resonance of the medical lens and thinking about things around social prescription, using the word prescription, RX, medicine, and if that's not resonant with everybody, is there other language that you've come across that maybe has been more connective?
This is an issue that
I'd be
keeps
happy
getting
to-
brought up. Yes, it's
I know.
somewhat controversial in that there's positives about it being called a prescription because people sometimes take prescription things seriously, and there's negatives in that it's a prescription. And so, yeah, I'd be interested in Jill in what you have to say, but it's definitely an area of controversy.
Just to start us off, because I feel Jules's energy coming in here too. I know you have something to say, Jules. Yeah, so there's a lot of language considerations in this space. I think somewhere in the question and answer there was a mention of social, or a question about social as well. And in the United States, social services have historically been stigmatized, right? And that's very different than the UK and places where social prescribing is fully, or differently established. So we have that to contend with, right? I think the Surgeon General's attention to loneliness is maybe changing our collective relationship to the concept of social for the better. I think that the notion of prescribing is also problematic, but has a place. I think it depends on how we position it in the big story of social prescribing. Ultimately, I think social prescribing is a step toward we, the people, recognizing that participation in the arts is health promoting, right? Understanding the relationship between the arts and health, and just asking ourselves on Sunday night, like we might say, when am I going to exercise this week? Because of course I know that's really important to my health. When am I going to be creative, or when am I going to participate in the arts this week? Because of course that's a way in which I stay healthy. So, but we, collectively kind of other the arts, largely. I mean, there are things that some people are good at, there are things that some people can afford, or some people participate in, or some people like. We don't collectively have that awareness. Ultimately, we can be creative in our homes, doing things like setting a beautiful table for breakfast, right? Knitting, woodworking. There are many creative things that we have access to in our own homes, in our families, in our communities. But where I think social prescribing can be helpful in pushing us over that hump of recognizing and engaging creativity in our homes and communities is the prescribing, because it's, for the medical system to make that link for people and to connect folks for whom access is limited for a variety of reasons, I think is a part of the landscape in which we collectively engage the arts for our health. So I think the idea of the gatekeeper of prescribing can be problematic. We certainly don't want to make another gate to access, but I think it can be instrumental in providing access in some areas where access is limited.
I was going to ask all of you just for a closing comment if you would like. We're definitely pushing time. So Don, would you like to end with the message?
Sure. Thank you, Alan. My comments have really focused on the human benefits of time in nature. What I have not emphasized is that we are living in an unprecedented time in terms of the precarious nature of planetary health and our environment. And in the Nature RX movement, we really believe that one part is healing the individual, and the other part is engaging the individual to care about the natural world so that they will move to action.
Thank you.
Surely.
Jules? Amen.
I love that. Yeah, I just want to say I'm so excited to follow up with everyone in the chat. This is amazing. And I guess my closing comment would be, happy first Social Prescribing Day here in the USA. Let's be honest, the USA, we've got an election year. We've got a lot of conflicts and negative news and things on our hand, but this is a really hopeful story. And it's all thanks to the people, not me, the practitioners and leaders on this panel, in this chat. So I'm just so grateful for Social Prescribing USA, bringing us all together and helping us to tell that really hopeful story.
Thank you for being part of it. Jill.
I think there's so much room for innovation in this space. So just want to encourage everybody to innovate in your own community.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, it's been a really amazing hour plus, and I have loved having all of these panelists. I want to thank you, Jules, Jill, and Don, first of all, and thank all of the participants for joining us. I really wish we could spend another hour or so and just keep kicking it around because there's so much to talk about. We do know that eventually this needs to become in-person meeting, conference, that's just where this needs to go, because we need to be having these conversations across different sectors and really bring this together. So we are working towards that goal. I hope you now see why social prescribing needs to happen. And if you all get involved and push for it, I believe it will. I just think that this is an idea whose time has come. I want to remind you about the virtual event starting now in about 15 minutes. But I think it's going to be a healing, chill kind of space. So you can find that online if you're local, and also in our chat. If you're local to San Francisco, please come to Manny's. It's going to be a great event. They've mentioned 2 of the speakers, and there's 2 others that are great. If you've been inspired, please sign up for our newsletter, contact us at Social Prescribing USA, let us know how you'd like to get involved. Let people know in social media about social prescribing. I dream of the day when I don't have to explain what social prescribing is, that someone's like, oh, social prescribing. So that, just keep talking about it. And, I think we'll get there. We'll be sending a recording and the links by early next week, and we will see you soon, and happy Social Prescribing Day. Thank you very much.